contributor and former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, Mr. Karl Rove. Karl, always good to see an important story happening here today, but I do question whether there's an amount of political theater here involved. What do you say?
An enormous amount of political theater. Look, Al Franken, Senator Franken, D, Minnesota and Hollywood, asked Sessions during the hearing, what would you do if you found out that members of the campaign staff were in communication with the Russians? And Jeff Sessions, Senator Sessions, answered it correctly, which was, I'm not aware of those activities, and, you know, I don't want to comment on a hypothetical. Senator Leahy then sent him a written question saying, have you had any conversations with officials of the Russian government about the 2016 campaign? To which Sessions said no. Now, he acknowledges that he met twice with the ambassador, but he met in his role as the Senate Armed Services Committee member, not as a campaign official.
Okay, so I think that's what's critical here, right? I mean, he was on the Armed Services Committee. You would, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, meet with ambassadors from various countries at any given time. I mean, isn't that sort of just kind of what you got to do? I mean, the question is whether or not they were talking about the campaign, and he's made it clear, no, it was within a different capacity.
So look, it doesn't happen a lot. You would anticipate, having taken a high-profile role as a national security issue advisor to candidate Trump, that the ambassadors would be trying to, you know, climb over the walls and get a meeting with him. But this is just, a lot of this is just abject politics. My personal favorite is Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri, who got all up in arms and called for him to resign and called for him to be removed from this issue. Said, I've been a member of the Armed Services Committee for 10 years, and I have never had a call or a meeting with the Russian ambassador. That was today. Well, Ian Pryor at Senate Leadership Fund, a super PAC I'm involved with, went back and checked her Twitter feed and found her tweeting out in 2013, I'm looking forward to meeting personally with the Russian ambassador. And in 2015, I got to go jump on and get on a call with the Russian ambassador. So a lot of this is politics. But having said that, I do think that if the FBI investigation goes forward and finds something and makes a referral to the Maine Justice Department, that it would be right for Senator Sessions, Attorney General Sessions, to recuse himself from it from this perspective. He was an official in the campaign. This may touch people who were involved in the campaign if there is something there. And it would just give people confidence if he said, you know what, I was active in the campaign, I played a role, and I'm going to step aside and let my deputy make these decisions. You're concerned, once again, about any appearance of impropriety. And you don't want to have those doubts seated in the American public. So, you know, in your view, take the high road. Say, I don't have anything to do with this, but just so you all feel better about it, I will recuse myself. And that's, you know what, I think he signaled that this morning. He was caught on by a reporter as he was getting into his car, and he said, in essence, I would do the appropriate thing. And look, I've known Jeff Sessions for a long, long time. He has a great sense of integrity, and there's no doubt in my mind that if this were to somehow, the investigation were somehow going to lead to something, that he would understand that his role in the campaign would require him to recuse himself. In other words, a little too convoluted given all the ties and the relationships he has. Right. What is it? You have known him a long time. What is your sort of gut sense of whether or not this could have happened at all? Look, if Jeff Sessions is not the kind of guy. I mean, look, I went back. That's why I wanted to be fair. I went back and looked at the Franken question. What would you do if you found this out? Hey, by the way, I think we've got it. So let me play it for the viewers so they know exactly what you're talking about, Karl. Here we go.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
All right, so that is the soundbite in question. That is the moment there. But he said, look, I'm not aware of any of those activities. But he did say, look, I've been called a surrogate a time or two for the campaign, and I haven't had any communications with the Russians. That's where he may get tripped up a little bit in the semantics, because I hear what you're saying. He meant that he had no political communications.
Exactly right. I mean, the question was the context of, campaign activity. And yeah, it was inartful. And you're right. This is one reason why, if something emerges and the FBI comes to Main Justice and says, we found information that would lead us to believe that you need to know about this, that he should recuse himself. But look, I mean, Franken, remember, what would you do if? And it wasn't, did you talk to him? Leahy specifically says, have you had any contact with Russian officials about the 2016 campaign? And he says no, because the contact he did have was apparently in his role as the Armed Services Committee.
Which again, you know, is normal, right? I mean, if you're in the Armed Services Committee, you do meet with ambassadors from different countries, and you made the point about Claire McCaskill, who seems to have forgotten that she met with the Russian ambassador, even tweeted about it.
I do want to be clear. Having been through a couple of presidential campaigns, they're both, particularly in the general election, ambassadors and representatives of foreign governments are desperate to try and make a contact with both Republican and Democratic presidential candidates in their campaigns, just so that whoever wins, they've begun to develop a relationship with them. So there's no doubt in my mind that Jeff was, you know, other members of the Armed Services Committee were not visited by the Russian ambassador during the same time frame, apparently. And one of the reasons was because Jeff was the National Security Issue Chairman advisor for the Trump campaign. So, of course, they're trying to get a chance to plant themselves in front of him and begin to develop a relationship.
Hey, Karl, very quickly before I let you go, just so I'm completely clear on this, do you feel like he should recuse himself now, given what's going on, or wait to see? No, wait.
Well, look. This is all in the hands of the FBI, and Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, is making a mistake if he is demanding that the FBI, in the middle of an investigation, turn over information for him so that he can go have a news conference and be a hot dog. Leave it in the hands of the FBI. In my opinion, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee ought to look at this question of Russian involvement in the election. I trust the Senate Intelligence Committee more because you have an independent Republican in Richard Burr. You have a sensible Democrat in Senator Warner from Virginia. The House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff is one of the most highly partisan members of the committee. He is irresponsible at times. I'd be happy to go into that with you at some later time. But I feel better about the Senate Intelligence Committee looking into this than the House. But leave it in those committees and leave it at the FBI. And don't be trying to force the FBI to prematurely cough up whatever they've got. Let the investigation run its course.